So guys, today we've got probably the newest Subaru we've had on the channel. It's a 2017 Forester. This is Brian's Forester. We've worked on many of his cars and his family's cars in the past. Today we've got this car in for a wheel bearing noise concern. Went and test drove it. I'll put a clip in. We got 67,586 miles on it, so let's see if we can hear something. Definitely hearing a whining noise, sounds like a wheel bearing. Hear a little bit of air noise too, wind noise. There is some noise from the crossbars up there, but you can hear the whining of that wheel bearing. Pretty confident it's coming from the rear, so was he. He sent me the car with 2 genuine Subaru wheel bearing hub assemblies and 2 Subaru genuine axle nuts. So like I said, I've already test drove it. I heard noise in the rear. I think it's only the right rear, but he sent me 2 bearings, so might as well go ahead and put both of them on it. So let's go ahead and get into it. Before we do, if you're wanting to tackle this on a newer Subaru yourself, you're gonna need a Subaru Select Monitor or a Snap-on or a larger, bigger money scan tool, because you have to put the rear electronic brakes into service mode before you go any further. All right, so now we'll go ahead and jack up the rear of the vehicle and support on jack stand. Be sure to give it a shake test once you got it on the jack stands. Make sure it is not gonna fall, not gonna move, and it's stable. We'll go ahead and remove the rear wheel and tire assembly. Now we'll go ahead and remove the rear CV axle nut. 32 millimeters. And we'll go ahead and remove the rear brake caliper and caliper bracket and rear rotor. 12 millimeter headed bolt here that holds the brake line to the spindle. Pop that loose. We got 14 millimeter headed bolts here on the brake calipers. Get our brake caliper out of the way. Tied up where it won't be in our way working. Always support the caliper, don't let it hang by the hose. That'll stress your brake hose. Got 14 millimeter headed bolts here on the brake caliper bracket. Go ahead and pull the rear rotor off. Now we need to remove our ABS wheel speed sensor. See the wire here. If you follow the wire down, it should be a 10 millimeter headed bolt. Just pop that out. So ABS wheel speed sensor right there. Remove that 10 millimeter and pull it out of there. Now that we got the 10 millimeter headed bolt out up here and remove the ABS wheel speed sensor, we can remove this wheel bearing hub assembly. We have 4 14 millimeter headed bolts, 2 on either side of the CV axle. You see 2 here, there's 2 back there. Get them out and we should be able to pull that hub right out of there. And remove the 2 on the other side. All right, all 4 of the bolts are out on the back. I'll push on the axle shaft, make sure it is free. Let's see if we can get this hub bearing out of there. And it's a little bit on the stuck side where it's not falling out by hand, so let's go get a little persuader. Remember guys, safety glasses. Don't forget them. It looks like we've got our bearing out of the strut, but our backing plate is stuck on there. So we'll gently tap that off from the back side and we'll be ready to put that new hub bearing assembly up on there. All right guys, now that we've knocked out the old rusty wheel bearing hub assembly, we can go ahead and install our new wheel bearing hub assembly. Now you want to go in here and clean up any corrosion inside the bore here of the spindle and also in here for the backing plate for the brakes. Now part number for this new rear hub assembly is 28473FL040. So on the back side of your wheel bearing hub assembly is an electromagnetic encoder ring for your ABS wheel speed sensor. Don't get any magnetic sockets or big magnets near this that could mess up the magnetic field. All right, wheel bearing hub assembly in the backing plate, and then onto the end of this axle, and then all back into the spindle. And throw your 4 14mm headed bolts back in. Once you've got all the bolts pretty much evenly tightened up by hand, you want to do this evenly so you don't pull the hub into the spindle crooked. You're going to want to torque all the bolts to 65 Newton meters. All right, 65 Newton meters set on the torque wrench. All right, now that our hub bearing assembly is torqued to specification, we can go ahead and reinstall our brake rotor. And our brake caliper bracket. And we'll torque these to 66 Newton meters. Now I can reinstall the brake caliper. Reinstall our ABS wheel speed sensor up here at the top. And resecure the brake line with the 12mm headed bolt to the spindle. Now I need to install a new CV axle nut. Part number is 902170049. And we're going to be torquing this to 190 Newton meters. Now you want to do this with the axle and the vehicle suspension unloaded. You don't want it to have any kind of lateral load on it, because when you torque this nut, this preloads the wheel bearing in the hub bearing assembly. So if you over tighten it, under tighten it, or tighten it with the weight of the vehicle on the ground, you're going to have issues. You got to do it this way if you want your wheel bearing assembly to last. So what you want to do is either put your parking brake on or have someone sit in the car and press the brake pedal down, or you can put a pry bar across your wheel studs. Not recommended because you might damage the threads, but whatever way you got to do to lock this thing up where you can torque this nut to 190 Newton meters, do it. right on 190 Newton meters set. Now what you want to do is take yourself a punch or a chisel and stake the CV axle nut into the slot here in the axle, so you pin them together where they cannot come loose. Just like so. Just pin it in to that slot and you're all good. All right, now we're going to reinstall our wheel and tire. And now we'll torque all the lug nuts to 120 Newton meters. And we're all set. All we got to do is jack the car back up, take the jack stands out, and lower it back to the ground. All right, guys, and that'll do it for the video. Our wheel bearing is replaced. All we got to do now is go for a test drive. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you all in the next one.